Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi. I'm real excited tonight because this man, what started out as just a summer job turned into a dream job. He's going to talk to us about a new YouTube channel in honor of Bob Hope. He's done a lot of work with Bob Hope. I mean, he's been around forever, almost 40 years. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Jim Hardy. And Jim, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you having me on the show.
No problem. So, Jim, before we get to the whole how it all came about with Bob Hope, what were your future goals when you had graduated high school? I mean, did you want to get into something with TV, or was that just something that kind of happened in time?
No, I really did. I studied film and television production at Oklahoma. So I came out here with the hopes and dreams of getting into the entertainment industry. And as luck would have it, I did.
Yeah. And, Jim, it's amazing how things work out, though, sometimes because, how it all happened for you with Bob Hope is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you took a summer job around 1986 and it was for Bob Hope Enterprises as a production assistant.
Yeah, that's right. It was 1986 in June. The fellow that they had there either needed to or wanted to take the summer off for some reason. And so I got invited in just to take his place. And at the end of the summer, they asked me if I wanted to make it permanent. I said, heck yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Jim, being a young guy and you get this summer job, I mean, did you even, when you took it, thought anything of it like, maybe I could do some work with Bob Hope, or was it pretty much just trying to, it was almost like an internship as well when you think about it. So, I mean, did you ever think that, during that summer that you would even get to, work with Bob or anything like that?
Well, typically they don't do shows during the summer, television shows, but they did have a show going on that summer. So I did know that I was going to be working on a production, which was good. And also he would be doing some personal appearances, which was typical of his schedule at that time. But again, I thought, well, this will be a great 3-month experience. I'll meet some people, maybe I'll network a little bit, and it'll lead to something. I kind of went into that with that attitude, and it just clicked. And I don't know if the fellow that I replaced, I don't know if he decided he wasn't coming back or they decided he wasn't coming back. All I know is they asked me if I wanted to hang on, stick around, and boy, I sure did. I didn't know I'd be around 38 years later.
Right, and it's kind of funny too, Jim, because the running joke for decades was a guy by the name of Wally Pipp, who was a baseball player for the
yes.
He came out of the game because he was feeling ill, and Lou Gehrig came in, and then the rest is history. Lou never came out of the lineup, but it's almost like the same situation with yourself because you never thought that this was ever going to turn into anything as big as it did. And like you said, in 1986, I mean, way before the internet and stuff like that. And then here you are almost 40 years later, still involved with Bob Hope and the foundation that, has been started and things like that. So, I mean, it really is like almost in a lot of ways, Jim, I look at it like this, is that anybody who is trying to make it big in whatever they decide to do, whether it's music, sports, whatever the case is, you can never just think it's impossible because dreams can happen. And I mean, you're living proof of that.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it was a lot of luck. There's a lot of being in the right place at the right time. And, so I consider myself to be extremely lucky to have had the opportunity and the way it turned out.
Right. So let me ask you, Jim, before you had taken the job permanently, what were some of the things you did in those 3 months that summer? I mean, I know like a lot of times when you're taking jobs like that, you got to do things that maybe sometimes you don't like to do. You got to do more of the, behind the scenes stuff. You don't always get to interact with, somebody like Bob, but what were some of the things you did that summer?
Well, we did a show down in San Diego that summer. So you're doing a lot of location type stuff, organizing and scheduling, getting the material from the writers to Bob and so forth. Running tape for him, which was one of the jobs that you have as a production assistant. You go over to his house and you run tape for him of what we shot, and he looks at it and he starts to make editing notes and that type of thing. So, I didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing, but you do have a fair amount of involvement with Bob when you're in that position, simply because you're the person that goes over and runs the machines for him, and you sit right there with him. And, once in a while he'll ask you your opinion about something, and he'll say, what did you think about that? And there'll be a joke that he thought was going to be a killer, and it goes flat. And he's like, what do you think went wrong there?
Right.
So there was more involvement with him than I guess I anticipated there would be, not really knowing what was involved in being in that position, but certainly was a heck of a lot of fun, and he was a terrific person to be around.
Right. And now let me ask you, I mean, I'm sure this is probably a question I already know the answer to, but what do you remember your first interaction with him? I mean, it's like they say, I was there on that day when something happened that was cool, and you always remember that moment, like anything, sports, TV, whatever, you always remember that moment when something big happened. Do you remember that first interaction with him?
Yeah, the first interaction that I had was to go over, to bring some tape over, and to run it for him. So I didn't know what was entailed in that, but he had a little studio set up next to his bedroom. He had some 3/4-inch tape machines, which was the standard of the day, and a big television, and two chairs that faced it, and he sat in one and you sat in the other, and you put the tapes in and you ran it and you went forward and you went back and you played stuff. Let's see that again. Let's go back. Let's look at this. And around lunchtime, he said, "Well, are you hungry?" And I said, "Yeah, I could eat." So I thought, well, this is interesting. My first day on the job with Bob, and we're going to have lunch. And he calls down to the kitchen and he says, "What do you got down there?" It's not. He's not telling him what he wants. He said, "What do you got?" And he didn't expect particularly special treatment, and they brought up some baked beans and toast, and that's what they had, and we were glad to have it. But I just thought, well, this is really interesting. You got to see he was a person that did not hold himself to be better than anybody else in particular. He didn't. He treated everybody equally and was friendly to everybody. And I just thought that was an interesting way to put it. What do you got down there? It's like going to a restaurant and saying,
right.
Yeah.
And Jim, let me ask you. I mean, like, I gotta believe, because no matter what, no matter how successful you became at the work you did with Bob, but that first time meeting him, I mean, did you have those knots in your stomach, that feeling, those butterflies? Because I feel like, driving over, knowing that I'm on my way to meet somebody like him, who's, an icon in TV, that you had to have had some butterflies on the way there.
Oh yeah, because you have no idea what to expect. I mean, this is one of the most famous people on the planet, and the Bob Hope Show was always running in my house when I was growing up. So, I was very aware of who he was. And, you don't know what to expect from a person like that. You don't know what you're going to get. And I couldn't have been more pleasantly surprised. But, I would come to learn later on that, that whole generation was like that. He was not unique in that regard. That's George Burns or Danny Thomas or Milton Berle or Lucille Ball. They were all like that. They were just friendly to everybody. And, I don't think that there's so much of that anymore.
Yeah, definitely not. And, the other thing about it too, Jim, that I find fascinating is, by the time you started working with Bob, he was probably late 70s, early 80s, correct?
He was 83.
Yeah, 83. So, I mean, the remarkable thing about Bob, and I look at Bob, I look at Merton Burrell, a guy by the name of Norman Lloyd who passed a couple of years ago. But these guys worked so much, even when they were into their 80s, that I really believe in a lot of ways they give everybody hope that just because you're in your 80s doesn't mean you're near the end of your career or anything like that. You could keep working as long as you're healthy and you feel young. And those guys, in a lot of ways, they prove that being in your 80s doesn't make you old. You still could keep working.
Absolutely. I think as long as you're doing something that you really enjoy, that probably helps to keep you young. I mean, this was a man at 83 years old that went up the stairs 2 at a time. He was in better shape than I was. I was 25. It was remarkable. I knew he was 83 by years, but if you just met him on the street, I think you wouldn't think he was more than 70, 60, late 60s, 70. It's just the way he carried himself. Physically, he was in good shape. Mentally, he was just razor sharp. So, genetics might be a part of that, but the fact that he was doing something that he loved every day, I'm sure had a lot to do with keeping him young and keeping him as sharp as he was.
Yeah, and Jim, the thing too, you talked about this a few minutes ago, how unfortunately TV has changed in a lot of ways, and it's just not the same. You talked about the actors not being as friendly and things like that, but in a lot of ways, I look at the Bob Hope in the same way with his programs that he did, because it was always a great feeling that you knew on a Saturday night that after like shows like Golden Girls or Empty Nest, things like that, that there was going to be a Bob Hope special on NBC. And really that got you pumped up. And I know there's a lot of streaming now. You have so much access to TV. And while some of it's good, I still say some of it's bad, because back then, I mean, TV was at its best, especially when Bob was doing those, Bob Hope specials and things like that, because you knew like that entire day that you're going to watch your favorite shows and then you're going to see Bob Hope to end the night.
Yeah, I think, the fact that it wasn't a weekly show, there would be a Bob Hope show maybe every month or every 6 weeks or something. And it was called a special because it was special. It was it was not a regularly scheduled thing. When you watched, one Bob Hope show, you didn't know when the next one was going to be. It's not you tune in next Friday at the same time. There's going to be another one. It might be 6 weeks before the next Bob Hope special. So I think there was a sort of anticipation about it, and the audiences were very large for those shows. It's, like you said, I think the value of entertainment was just better in those days, despite the fact that there were only 3 channels to choose from. CNN did an interesting series. They did the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and I remember watching the 70s and thinking, boy, how lucky I was to grow up at that time. I mean, the television, the entertainment that was available, even though there were only 3 channels, I mean, it was all so good, so good. Now you have so much content available to you, but in a lot of ways, it's very diluted.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, like I said, it's just, I know in some aspects it's better, like including this YouTube channel that we're going to talk about. I mean, that really benefits, Bob's legacy. But the other thing of it is where I don't like it is there, it doesn't seem like TV is as special as it once was. Like you used to get pumped up when you knew the summer was ending and you knew your favorite shows were coming back in the fall, and you just don't. And now there's so many, they take too many hiatuses now too as well. So it just doesn't seem like TV. I don't think it'll ever be good as it was, pre, before like 1996. It was tremendous, going all the way back to, the early 90s and below. It was just tremendous.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever be the same, Mike, as it was. And, like you say, it was a 39-week season and you were going to get a new show every week. There was never a rerun in the middle of the season. And so, then, you'd get summer replacements, and that type of thing that just filled the time. But like you say, when the Jerry Lewis telethon came around, you knew that summer was just about over. and it's time to go back to school, but you're also going to get all your shows are going to be back, and they're going to be brand new for the next 39 weeks. And, there's kind of a happenstance to the whole scheduling situation now. It's one week you got a show, and next week it's a rerun, then they'll be back again, and there's no consistency to it anymore.
Yeah, and you talk about reruns. Now, if you miss your show on a Tuesday night, you could see it Wednesday. It's on demand or it's streaming somewhere. Where if you missed that show on a Tuesday night, you weren't going to see it again until it was in reruns. And that's why a lot of fans didn't miss their favorite shows, because if you miss one, it'd be hard for you to keep up with the rest of the season.
Yeah, it was kind of an event. It was everybody had their favorite show, and sometimes you would watch with a bunch of your friends or so forth. And yeah, when that show started, that, be quiet, because you're not going to get another chance to see it again. I can't hear. Stop talking.
Yeah, exactly. So correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. You did about at least over 40 television shows with Bob, or collaborated something that had to do with Bob Hope, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did about.
Yes. So just talk to me about obviously it was that one you got to do in the summer, but is there one or a couple that really stand out to you where you were like, you know what, this was some of my favorite stuff to do?
Well, I'll tell you, there was a show that he had on Milton Berle, George Burns, and Danny Thomas all on the same show. And I thought, this is just incredible. I've already met Bob, and now I'm meeting three other legends of television at once. And that was a remarkable show for me, because you got to see the four of them, and they were so professional. They've been doing this for 40 years, 30 years already, so it was easy for them. But they never stepped on each other's lines. The timing that they all had, it was just a well-oiled machine, and you just kind of watching it as an observer, and you go, wow. These are really seasoned veterans. Came up from vaudeville, and I could reach out and touch these people. I felt the same way when I met Lucy. Lucy was just a legend, and I thought, sometimes you got to pinch yourself, remind yourself, where you are.
Yeah, and you talk about Milton, Danny, George, those guys too. When I would watch them perform, while they were actors, comedians, I never felt like they were acting. Like they were being themselves, but just entertaining people like you and myself and fans everywhere. They did it so effortlessly sometimes, and that's really the beauty of. They really were, geniuses at what they did.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What you see is what you get. They were the same personality when the cameras were off as they were when the cameras were on. So yeah, they were just being themselves. And the beauty of that is that that's who we wanted them to be. We enjoyed their brand of humor, their brand of entertainment, and they weren't trying to be something they're not. And it showed. And so when you see them, all work together, it's like four buddies just getting together to oh, let's put on a show.
Right. So Jim, let me ask you. I would assume that because of the work you were doing with Bob, and you were, one of his producers, I would think that you really didn't have a lot of time to do other projects. But did you do other projects at the same time you were working with Bob? No. So strictly Bob Hope. And, people don't realize this too, Jim. It wasn't just putting these Bob Hope specials together. There was all the other stuff that went into it, the editing, breaking everything down, seeing what works, the writing, everything like that. So, it was a lot of work to put on an 2-hour special for, something that Bob Hope did.
Yeah, it was, it took 4 to 5 weeks typically to get a special done. It's starting with writers' meetings and going over topics. What do we want to talk about? what's hot right now. For instance, when Star Wars was really hot, okay, we know we're going to do a Star Wars themed sketch. It's just working out. All right, what is the content going to be? And then the writers go off and do their own thing, and every writer writes everything.
Right.
Writers' rooms today, they'll discuss it. Okay, this episode's going to be. This is what's going to happen in this episode. This is what we're going to do in this episode, and then they will assign that episode to a writer, and the other writers don't write that episode. They write a different episode. With Hope, every writer wrote a monologue on all the topics. Every writer wrote a sketch on the topic that was given. Every writer wrote the talk spot that he was going to have with Barbara Eden or whoever it is. So, every writer essentially wrote an entire show, and then he would pick and choose out of all of that material what he was going to use. And so you got a parfait there of stuff from everybody. And that was one of his great talents, is to be able to edit and cobble together material from different sources.
Right. One of the things you were fortunate to do, and what I look at is in the 80s, there were several TV shows, dramas that were really popular. And two of them I think of are Dynasty and Knots Landing. And in a lot of ways, they were popular too, because the women really dominated those shows. Yeah. And you got to work with some of those women with, Bob Hope. I think of Joan Collins, Donna Mills, Joan Van Ark. So just talk about working with, because those are three talented women right there who, like I said, they really changed the way, like at one time where a lot of shows were dominated with men being the leading roles, it was the opposite with Knots Landing and Dynasty. So just talk about working with them a little bit.
Yeah, what's interesting about, first of all, Bob always wanted to have whoever was the brightest star, so whoever the spotlight was on, he wanted to have them on the show, and he could get them. They were, nobody ever said no to doing the Bob Hope show. The interesting thing about it was that, like you say, these were dramas, those shows. They were dramas, and these were dramatic actresses. And we were not having them come on the show to do a soliloquy, to do Shakespeare here. We're doing musical comedy. And they were not only good at it, which just goes to prove that they're great performers, but they embraced it, and they were very interested and open to trying to do something that's maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone, singing and dancing and that type of thing, which was always a part of what you would do as a guest. And I don't know that you would ever see Donna Mills or Joan Van Ark singing and dancing anywhere else, but you would see them on the Bob Hope show, because that's just part of the type of format that he had. And they loved it. They embraced trying to do something new. And they
got to see them do comedy type routines, which was good because they were in a drama series. So you got to see that even though they were doing drama, they were talented enough where they could do anything. And you really got to see that with these Bob Hope specials.
Yeah, you knew when you had Lucy coming on that you're going to get great comedy, because that's what she does. You didn't always know what you were going to get, with a dramatic actress. And the reality is that, because they're performers and they've been doing this a long time, it takes a long time to become a star and get on, be a headliner on your own show. So, they're not new to the craft. But what you discover is that they all understand timing. Dramatic timing and comedic timing are different, but they understand timing, and they picked up comedic timing very quickly because it's just part of the craft. They know how to do it.
Right. Jim, another classic, the Desert Classic. I mean, you had people like Clint Eastwood, Arnold Palmer, Telly Savalas, Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, things like that. I mean, you're getting to work with all these different people. So even though you're getting to work with a legend like Bob Hope, it opens so many doors as well with other people to be creative with and work with. So, I mean, right there alone it had to just be so rewarding when you're getting to work with individuals as talented as these people were.
Yeah, it was. I just say how lucky I am. It's a. When I was a teenager, I used to drool over Barbara Eaton. I'm sure like half of America did. And 8 years later, there she is. You know,
Yeah.
she's right there in front of me. I'm talking to Barbara Eaton, and I thought, I mean, this is who would have believed that this would happen? And the Desert Classic was a great venue for that as well, because the pro-am was a part of that golf tournament. So the first couple of days is not only are you meeting all the professional golfers, but they're playing golf with actors, actresses, and musicians and so forth, and you're getting to meet all these people, and it's just I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It was almost surreal in a way. You kind of, when you at the end of the day and you go home and you're kind of laying there thinking, reviewing the day, and you're just thinking of all the people you just met, and it's like, wow,
Right.
it's
Exactly.
5 years ago, I never would have guessed that I would be doing this.
Right. And then to top it all off, I mean, I think anybody who has the opportunity to meet a former president, that's a big time thrill for somebody. And you got to meet quite a few presidents with working with Bob. So just talk about that experience, because I mean, you're meeting somebody that, ran the country for several years.
Yeah, I met Reagan and Carter in particular closely, and Bush one. Uh, all had good relationships with Bob. Ford in particular, because they played golf together a lot, even after he wasn't president when I met him, but they played golf together a lot. And later on, President Clinton, I got to meet him. But I'll tell you what, to a man, they have great senses of humor. I think obviously they're smart people. And, Mel Brooks once said, the funniest people in the room are the smartest people in the room. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because you can't be uh, slow and funny. Smart people are funny. And
Yeah.
these were all very smart gentlemen, and had great senses of humor, because they were in a situation now where they could relax, and they weren't being asked to, weigh in and consider issues of great gravity. They were allowed to just, be themselves here for a while, and hit a few golf balls, or just do a little patter with Bob or whatever it was, and when they had an opportunity to just relax and be themselves and let their hair down, so to speak. Um, well, it would be hard to find anything that you didn't like about them. It didn't matter what your politics were. Jimmy Carter had a remarkably dry sense of humor. He was very amusing. Reagan was, because Reagan had been an actor for most
Right.
of his life, he was very polished. But they're just they were just very enjoyable people to be around. And whether you agreed with the politics or you didn't, you certainly had to respect the the character and the people that they were. It's something I think that we don't really have much anymore. There's not much respect for the office anymore, which is,
Right.
a bit of a shame. I think we've lost our way a little bit as far as that goes.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Jim, I got to tell you, one of the coolest things that's going on right now is the launch of the Bob Hope channel on YouTube. And it's through the Bob and Dolores Hope Foundation. And the thing that I really find remarkable about it is there's like thousands of hours of TV, radio, film that, I mean, fans could could see and view. So let me ask you, how did the idea get started to put it on YouTube, and when does the channel exactly launch?
Well, it's launched. So we've been doing this for a couple of months now. There's some material
Yeah.
up there already. The idea came from an outfit called Spotted Dog, and this is what they do. They have the Smothers Brothers channel up, and they have some other YouTube channels up, and they know how to do it. We don't really understand the technology of it, the algorithms and so forth that's involved with making a YouTube channel work. They do, and they came to us, and we thought, well, this is a great opportunity. Bob would have been all over this if he was still alive. He embraced all the new technologies over the years. I mean, television was a new technology at one time.
Yeah.
He would have been all over this. And yes, we have 1,000 hours of content here in my little dungeon here. There's a lot of material in here, most of which hasn't been seen since it was first on the air. And so a lot of this is going to be brand new to people, even people that have been Bob Hope fans for the last 40 years. They're going to see stuff that they may not have seen when it was first on. They're going to see stuff that they did see and want to see it again. We're putting up new material 2 or 3 times every week. So there's always something fresh to see. It's never going to get stale. What we put up last week, yesterday, or last month will still be up there. So the library of content that's available to the viewer is just going to keep growing. And I hope that not only will we entertain the folks that have been a Bob Hope fan for years, but I hope that we'll be able to introduce him to younger generations who have never had the opportunity to see his work and see what he's about, and have a chance to understand why he was important, why he was a great entertainer. And it's easy to find. You just jump on Google and search YouTube Bob Hope channel, and you'll find us right away. And hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and every time something new goes up, you'll know about it. There's going to be new stuff to see all the time, and there's some great material that's up there already. You see Michael Jackson when he's 15 years old, Jackson 5, and you see some very funny stuff with Bob and Arnold Palmer, because this is a PGA championship week, so we wanted to get some golf stuff up there. And Barbra Streisand, when she was just starting to get some traction, you had the biggest stars that you could get. There was a time, as you remember, there were only 3 channels.
Yeah, CBS, ABC, NBC. Yeah,
that was it. There were 3 channels. So and a Bob Hope show in its heyday would get a 45, 50, 55 share. So half of America was watching the Bob Hope show. So if you're a Barbra Streisand and you're just starting to get a little traction in life, in your career, and Bob Hope says, "Do you want to be on my show?" Boy, yeah. You can't buy that exposure. And I don't think that anything exists today that equals it.
Right. And let me ask you, Jim, how is the quality of all this stuff you put up? I mean, is it in the best possible quality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all been digitally restored over the years, and a lot of it was shot on film to start with, which holds up beautifully to begin with. But even the older stuff that's on tape, we found some guys that just really knew how to get those images and that sound off of that tape and onto something current and digital, and it's as good as it can get. And it'll last for 100 years now.
Yeah, definitely. And let me ask you, how's the channel doing with subscribers and with views? I mean, are you getting a lot of viewership with this?
Yeah, we are. Some of them, that's Frank Sinatra insult reel is, got probably 20 or 25,000 views already.
Wow.
And we're starting to see some uptick in the subscribers. Doing interviews like this is helping to get the word out, because people don't know it's there. There's so much competition for eyeballs anymore. So if people don't know it's there, they don't know how to find it. And if you go onto YouTube and just search Bob Hope, you're gonna get flooded with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's starting to get some traction. People are starting to find out about it, and that's a good thing. And I think that once, if we can get them to look once, they'll be back.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you talked about it, Michael Jackson at 15 years old. I mean, fans like myself who remember Michael Jackson more in the 80s when he was growing up with the Thriller and stuff like that. We didn't get to see him when he was younger. I mean, about the Jackson 5, but I
Yeah.
didn't really get to see him as a 15 or 16-year-old. So, I mean, and you talk about Barbara Streisand, I mean, seeing her start out and you see how famous she is now. I mean, stuff like that is the reason why this is so awesome, because you are going to get to not only see Bob Hope in his prime and how great he was, but you're also getting to see so many legends who were just trying to get their foot in the door back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. He was very interested in new talent. He kind of discovered Tony Bennett in a lot of ways in Greenwich Village, way back in the day, and he's the one that suggested to Tony that he change his name because he had a very long name that was hard to remember, and and he had him on the show really early on in Tony's career, and I mean, he just if he saw an opportunity, if he found somebody that he liked, and he wanted to help him out, put them on and introduce them, to America, and let America decide if they want to see them anymore. Phyllis Diller, and I mean,
Yeah.
he was instrumental in launching some of these careers, or certainly helping them along.
Right. And Jim, I gotta believe that, and you've worked, like I said, you started working with Bob in 1986. You got to do a lot of work with him, work on a lot of his specials. But I gotta believe this has got to be right up there at the top of the proudest thing you've done in your career, because now you're keeping his legacy alive, which it's always going to be alive. But now he's going to be on all day 24/7, and all you have to do is just type his name in the Bob Hope channel and you will see all this great archive footage. So I would say this has got to be maybe the proudest thing you've ever done.
Well, I'm very happy to be able to do it and be involved with it because, yes, like you say, it does keep his legacy alive. We have very short memories in life, and we forget people very quickly. And there are generations that have no idea who Bob Hope is, and I hope that we can change that. It's just, and to give an example, here's a little sideline. When we were moving offices, this is some time ago. My son was 12 years old, and I said, "Well, why don't you come over and help me pack boxes? You just put some tapes in boxes and stuff." He didn't pack one box because I had the Hope movies running in the background. He sat there and watched them all. In black and white. He's watching road pictures and he's watching old Bob Hope shows. In black and white. Kids don't watch black and white. If they're exposed to it, all of a sudden they realize, wow, this is funny. This is entertaining. It's fast. The timing is fast. He's a very accessible type of a character. Bob. The character that he always portrays. He's kind of an everyman who's always trying to, he's trying to be something a little more than he is, and he always comes up a little short, and we laugh at it. And I mean, he appeals. He'll still appeal today to anybody that's young if they get an opportunity to see it. So
yeah.
I certainly hope that we can get some some new eyeballs on this, and people will discover that he was a tremendous entertainer.
Right. Now you had mentioned that new stuff's going to be put out like at least 3 times a week. Is there a certain day, certain time, or is it just always look at the channel and see if there's updates coming? How will new stuff be added?
Yeah, there is, and I wish I knew the answer to this question, and I should know the answer to this question, but I don't. Spotted Dog. We provide the material. Spotted Dog, does all the technical part. They put it up there, and I think it goes up on Sundays and Wednesdays, but I could be wrong on that. But there is a pattern to it. It goes up with on a regular schedule so that people always know when to look for something new. But what I always tell people is when you subscribe, there's a little bell icon. I learned about this, that you click on that. And click all, and then every time something new goes up on the channel, you get a heads up about it, so you know that something new is there. But this is not a channel or a site that's going to sit dormant, for weeks or months, and then you have to keep looking to see if there's something new. There's going to be something new all the time. We're going to keep this thing fresh because there's 1,000 hours here behind me. I won't live long enough to put it all up. We got to get moving.
And Jim, I think it's really neat what you're doing, you, your team, everybody, because I mean, again, all those Bob Hope classics throughout the years. I mean, so many people in their living rooms love watching those. And I mean, for the people that could still remember those specials and watch Bob Hope like myself, it's a real treat for us. And then it's also a treat for us in the sense that we weren't around when he was really, getting big and stuff like that. So we're getting to see that. And then a younger generation of people who, if they take the time to really view this, they will get a lot out of watching him and, be very entertained because that's what he did for so many years, so many decades. So I just think it benefits everybody, new and old, that everybody is going to love this. And I think it's just a credit to what you and your team are doing to put this out there for everybody.
No, it's very kind of you to say, and I certainly appreciate you giving us an opportunity to tell your audience about it, that this is out there.
Yeah, definitely. So Jim, before we go, what would you? I mean, obviously you're doing this YouTube channel, but is there anything coming up down the road that you plan to put out there as well, or are you going to focus mainly on this right now?
Oh, you mean other than the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
We don't have any other productions planned particularly. I do licensing here out of this office when people want to use our material on something else, but that comes along once in a while. But we don't have any other productions in the pipeline. Kind of the last big thing that we were part of was the American Masters about Bob. That was a few years ago. We're not really in the production business anymore at this point. We're just trying to figure out how to get all this stuff that we already have in front of people's faces.
Right. Well, folks, for those who listen today and watch, it's the Bob Hope channel. It's on YouTube, and you could go to Google and type that in, and you'll see a bunch of stuff come up. You could go to YouTube and type that in, and you'll just see a ton of archived footage, which is going to be so cool for all of us to check out. But Jim, I really thank you for giving me some time today because I didn't, I found out about this probably last week, and when I did, I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, as a fan who loves the nostalgic part of TV, this is something that I'm really looking forward to watching every week. And I thank you for giving fans like myself, that opportunity to be able to view stuff like this. So thank you for all you do, and thank you for giving me some time today.
Well, thank you for giving me the time to tell people about it, and thank you for going and watching.
No problem. Well, folks, there you have it. And folks, not just the Bob Hope channel, which you're going to love checking that out, but I think you really have to admire somebody like Jim Hardy. And the reason I say this is he had a goal in life. And I mean, he wanted to be a part of TV and the production portion of it. But look what he's done. I mean, he took a summer job and he's been doing it nearly 40 years. And the reason is that you can never give up dreaming. If you have a goal and you want to achieve it, I mean, sometimes you are going to fail, but a lot of times you're going to succeed. And Jim Hardy is proof that you don't ever stop dreaming. And look where he is today. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.